Lily was a liability, a physical therapist with hands that trembled so badly the residents called her the ghost. Every time she held a brace, every time she adjusted a patient's posture, someone would smirk and whisper, "She's shaking again." But nobody knew the truth. Lily wasn't weak, she was quiet on purpose, because the last time she lived loudly, men died around her. And today, in Ward 4, a warlord's son just walked into the hospital to finish a job. A hostage situation inside a rehabilitation gym. The staff froze, the residents panicked, the security guards disappeared. Then Lily's trembling hands did something impossible. They became perfectly still. Because a tremor isn't always fear. Sometimes it's a loaded spring waiting to snap.
The hospital called it a normal morning shift. Bright lights, antiseptic air, tired nurses moving like shadows. Patients groaned in hallways, wheelchairs squeaked, monitors beeped like distant alarms. But inside the physical therapy wing, the atmosphere felt different, like something heavy lived there. Lily arrived early, as always. She wore plain scrubs, hair tied back, a simple badge with her name, Lily Carter, PT. Nothing about her looked dangerous. She had the posture of someone trying not to be noticed. Her hands shook the moment she touched the equipment, not wildly, just enough to draw attention, a tremble in her fingers, a slight vibration in her wrist, like her nerves were always on edge. And it didn't take long for the residents to start laughing again.
Dr. Evans was the worst of them. Young, athletic, confident. One of those residents who treated hospitals like personal stages. He loved attention, especially when he could humiliate someone beneath him. He'd slap Lily's shoulder too hard, snatch paperwork from her hands, or force her to hold heavy orthopedic braces longer than necessary. "Come on, ghost," he'd grin, hands still shaking. "You're supposed to help patients, not scare them." The other residents chuckled, pretending it was harmless. Even some nurses rolled their eyes but stayed quiet. Nobody wanted to fight Evans. His father was a board member. He was protected. Lily never fought back. She kept her eyes down. She smiled politely. She absorbed every insult like it didn't matter. But inside, something counted. Heartbeat, distance, exits, threat angles. Old habits never died.
Evans liked to test people. He believed power came from pressure. So he added more to Lily's plate every day. Hold this, carry that, stay late. And when her hands trembled, he would act like it proved she was broken. One afternoon, he made her lift a heavy cervical traction device and hold it while he talked to a nurse. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. Lily's fingers shook harder. A little sweat appeared at her temple. Evans laughed. "See? No stamina, no control. You're not built for this." Lily slowly lowered the device without dropping it. Her breathing remained steady, controlled, like she'd learned in a different world. Evans didn't know tremors weren't always fatigue. Sometimes they were the body preparing for sudden speed, muscles primed, nerves sharpened. Lily walked away in silence and watched him from the corner of her eye, not angry, just measuring. To everyone else, Lily was a damaged therapist with a nervous condition. But to Lily, the hospital was a cage built of glass and rules. She followed every protocol, smiled through every insult, because she was hiding something far more dangerous than weakness. She had once been someone else, someone with a different name, a different passport, a different purpose. The hospital didn't know the meaning behind her scars, the faint burn mark near her shoulder, the slight limp that only appeared when rain was coming. Her official story was simple. A car accident years ago left her with nerve damage. A rehabilitation program helped her recover. Now she worked quietly, helping others heal. It sounded believable. It sounded harmless. But Lily's accident wasn't a crash. It was a failed halo junk in 2012. And her rehab wasn't therapy. It was extraction.
She remembered the sky that night. Black, endless, unforgiving. The plane door opened, wind screaming like a beast. The jump should have been clean, timed perfectly, but something went wrong. A sudden crosswind, a malfunction in the oxygen system, a twist mid-air that ripped her shoulder and slammed her landing. She'd crawled through darkness for 3 hours with a fractured rib and blood in her mouth, still completing the mission, because failure wasn't allowed. Not when you were the medical handler of a unit that officially didn't exist. That unit didn't call themselves heroes. They called themselves operators. They crossed borders that governments denied. They did things that would never be written down. Lily had been their surgeon, paramedic, and last hope. She treated bullet wounds with shaking hands because adrenaline makes the body shake, but she never missed a stitch, never hesitated. Now she lived as a therapist in a hospital, trembling on purpose, because being invisible was the only way to stay alive. The hospital day continued like any other. Patients arrived for rehabilitation sessions, some limping, some recovering from surgeries, some learning how to walk again. Lily guided them gently, adjusting knees, rotating shoulders, teaching muscles to remember their jobs. She was good, too good. Her hands trembled, but her technique never failed. Even the senior therapists noticed. Some whispered that she had natural talent. Others said she must have trained somewhere elite. Evans, however, refused to acknowledge her skill. He needed her to stay small. That morning, he brought a new patient to Lily's station, an elderly man with a stiff hip and bruised ribs. Evans tossed the file onto her table. "Handle him," he said. "Don't mess up." Lily smiled politely. "Of course, doctor." Evans leaned closer, voice low. "You know what I think? I think you fake that tremor for sympathy." Lily's eyes didn't change, but her body recorded every word. Around noon, the mood shifted. It was subtle at first, like the air thickening. A nurse hurried past the therapy wing, her face pale. A security guard spoke urgently into his radio, then suddenly walked away like he'd been ordered to vanish. Lily noticed everything. She always did. A patient in the hallway whispered to his wife that he'd seen armed men enter the building. Another nurse said the ER was locked down without explanation. Evans scoffed when someone mentioned it. "This isn't a war zone, it's a hospital. Relax." Lily didn't relax. She scanned the exits. There were 2 main doors, a maintenance corridor, and an emergency stairwell. She also noted the nearest hard cover, a thick equipment cabinet, a reinforced therapy table, and the concrete wall behind the traction station. She moved her patients closer to safer positions under the excuse of better lighting. No one questioned her. Then the double doors of the PT gym burst open, and the hospital stopped being a hospital. It became a battlefield. The first man through the door looked like death in human form. Scarred face, cold eyes, a leather jacket hiding something heavy. Behind him came 3 more, broad shoulders, military boots, the kind of posture that screamed violence.
In the scarred man's hand was a Beretta. The gun didn't look dramatic. It looked professional, like it had ended lives quietly. Patients froze. One woman dropped her walker. A therapist stepped back, whispering, "Oh my God." Evans stood tall, trying to look in control. "Sir, you can't bring a weapon." The scarred man pointed the gun at Evans without hesitation. "Shut up," he said calmly. "You're all staying." Then he turned his attention to the center of the gym, where a young man lay on a therapy table, bandaged and bruised, a rival gang member recovering from injuries. The scarred man smiled like he'd finally found his prey. "You thought hiding in a hospital would save you," he whispered. And Lily, standing near the corner, watched him the way a predator watches another predator. Not frightened, focused. The hostage situation spread instantly. One of the gunmen locked the doors. Another took phones from staff and patients, tossing them into a bag. A third grabbed a nurse by the collar and shoved her against the wall. "Everyone on the floor," the scarred man ordered. "Now." People obeyed. They shook, cried, begged. Therapy equipment clattered as bodies dropped. The gym that once echoed with gentle encouragement now filled with fear. Evans hesitated. Pride kept him standing. "This is a medical facility. You can't—" The scarred man approached the therapy table with casual confidence. He didn't rush. He wanted everyone to watch. He wanted fear to marinate the air. He dragged the injured rival upright by his shirt. The patient groaned, barely conscious. "Do you know who my father is?" the scarred man asked softly. The injured man muttered something incoherent. The scarred man leaned close. "My father owns this city, and you tried to steal from him." He pulled the gun up, pressing the barrel near the man's forehead. A nurse sobbed. A patient screamed, "Please don't!" Evans, lying on the floor, stared helplessly. For the first time, his confidence was gone. He looked around like a child who expected someone else to solve the problem. Nobody moved. Nobody dared. Except Lily. She shifted slightly, barely noticeable. Her trembling hands moved toward the tray of rehabilitation tools, grip trainers, resistance bands, medical tape, a small metal reflex hammer. The scarred man's attention stayed locked on his victim. He didn't notice Lily's eyes. They weren't afraid. They were reading anatomy like a map. And in that moment, Lily's trembling stopped, like someone flipped a switch. Silence fell before the strike, one of those eerie pauses where time stretched. Lily rose slowly, as if she was about to beg for mercy. One gunman turned toward her, suspicious. "Sit down," he barked. Lily didn't argue. She stepped forward instead, hands lifted, palms open. Her voice was soft. "Please, don't do this here. He's injured. He could bleed out." The scarred man smirked. "That's the point." Lily took one more step closer. Her hands should have been shaking. Her whole body should have been trembling in terror. Instead, she was calm. Too calm. The gunman to her left raised his weapon slightly. The angle was wrong. His grip was sloppy. His finger too tight on the trigger. Amateur. Lily's gaze flicked to his wrist, then to his throat, then to the scarred man's knees. In her mind, she wasn't in a hospital anymore. She was back in the field, back in a room where one mistake meant death. She exhaled once and moved. It happened so fast, the human brain struggled to process it. Lily pivoted sharply, her body turning like a hinge. Her left hand grabbed the gunman's wrist, twisting it outward at a precise angle that forced his tendons to lock. His fingers opened involuntarily. The gun slipped. Before it hit the floor, Lily's right hand struck his neck, not a punch, but a surgical impact. 2 fingers drove into a nerve cluster beneath the jawline. The gunman's legs buckled instantly, his body collapsing like someone unplugged him. The scarred man turned, eyes widening. Lily stepped into him with no hesitation. She slammed her palm into his sternum, disrupting his breathing. Then she hooked her arm around his weapon hand and rolled her shoulder forward, using leverage, not strength. The Beretta flew across the gym. The scarred man gasped, stumbling back. The remaining gunman froze, shocked, and the people on the floor watched something impossible unfold. A trembling therapist dismantling killers like a machine in 4 seconds. One of the gunmen recovered first and rushed toward Lily with a knife pulled from his boot. He was large, twice her size. He swung downward, aiming for her shoulder. Lily moved like she had predicted the attack before it started. She stepped offline, letting the blade cut only air. Then she caught his arm with both hands and drove her elbow into his triceps tendon. A sharp snap echoed. His grip weakened. She used the moment to rotate his wrist inward, forcing the knife to point toward his own thigh. She pressed hard into the median nerve, making his fingers spasm. The knife fell. The man roared in pain and lunged again, but Lily didn't fight his power. She redirected it. With a smooth motion, she swept his leg at the exact angle that destabilized his center of gravity. He crashed onto his back with a violent thud. Lily's knee dropped beside his ribs, pinning him. Her hands returned to trembling, just slightly, like she was letting everyone see the weakness again. But now the gunmen weren't laughing. They were terrified, because the ghost had teeth. The last standing gunman raised his pistol, aiming at Lily's head. His hands shook worse than hers ever did. He wasn't trained for this. He was muscle, not mind. "Stop!" he shouted, voice cracking. "Don't move!" Lily didn't freeze. She didn't rush. She simply tilted her head slightly, as if studying him like a patient. "You're hyperventilating," she said calmly. "Your finger is tightening. You'll discharge accidentally." The gunman blinked, confused by her tone. Lily stepped forward slowly. "Put it down," she said, "before you hurt someone you weren't paid to hurt." The gunman hesitated. His eyes darted to his fallen teammates, one unconscious, one pinned, the leader gasping on the floor, clutching his chest like his heart was about to explode. The gunman's confidence shattered. He was no longer hunting. He was surviving. He aimed again, trying to reclaim control. And that was his mistake. Because Lily wasn't negotiating. She was closing distance. Her hands stopped trembling once more, and she moved like lightning. Lily lunged, not toward the gun, but toward the gunman's line of sight. She forced his brain to track her face instead of her hands. It was a field trick, distraction through movement. Her left hand slapped the barrel upward, shifting the aim away from the crowd. The gun fired once, blasting into the ceiling. Dust rained down. Patients screamed again. Before the gunman could react, Lily's left hand struck his inner elbow, an exact hit to the ulnar nerve. His arm spasmed. The pistol flew from his grip. Lily caught the weapon mid-air, rotated it, and pointed it toward the floor, never at a hostage. That detail mattered. It revealed training beyond normal combat instincts. Then Lily stepped behind him, locking her forearm around his neck while her other hand pressed into the carotid sinus, not choking, controlling blood flow. The gunman's knees weakened, his eyes rolled. He collapsed gently, unconscious, like a patient being guided into sleep. Then silence returned, heavy and stunned. Every hostage stared at Lily, not shaking anymore, not broken, just dangerous.
Evans sat up slowly, wiping blood from his nose. He looked at Lily like she was a ghost for real, something that didn't belong in this world. What are you?" he whispered. Lily didn't answer. She moved quickly to secure the weapons, kicking them away, sweeping knives under equipment, binding the unconscious gunman's wrists with medical tape. Her movements were efficient, clinical. A nurse crawled toward her, trembling. "Call security! Call the police!" the nurse begged. Lily shook her head. "Not yet." The nurse stared. "Why not?" Lily's eyes were sharp now. "Because these men aren't alone, and someone inside this building let them in." That sentence cut deeper than any weapon. An inside leak, corruption, a coordinated hit. Evans swallowed hard, realizing how blind he'd been. The scarred leader groaned, trying to rise. Lily stepped toward him, her shoe pressing gently but firmly against his chest, pinning him. "You came here to kill a man," she said quietly, "but you chose the wrong room." The leader looked up, eyes filled with hatred, then recognition, as if he'd seen her before.
"You?" the scarred man wheezed. "I know you." Lily's expression didn't change, but her heartbeat shifted slightly, just one beat faster. The man coughed, blood in his mouth. "You're her, the Valkyrie." The word hit the air like a secret code. Some staff didn't understand, but Lily did. She hadn't heard that name spoken in years. Evans frowned. "Valkyrie?" The leader laughed weakly. "She saves her own and kills ours." Lily leaned down, voice cold. "Who sent you?" The leader's smile faded. He refused to speak. Lily pressed 2 fingers into the side of his neck, not hard, precise. The man's face twisted in agony, his muscles locked, muscles seizing in involuntary pain. He gasped, "Stop!" Lily whispered, "Answer." The leader's eyes watered. He hated that she wasn't using brute force. She was using biology against him. He finally choked out a name, a faction, a powerful family tied to international arms. Lily released him, letting him breathe again. Then she stood, because now she understood. This wasn't just a hospital execution. It was a message, and she had just replied with violence.
The hostages slowly began to move, unsure if they were allowed. Lily raised one hand to keep them calm. "Stay low," she said. "Get behind the reinforced wall." No one questioned her now. She was no longer a therapist. She was command. Evans crawled toward her, voice trembling. "We have to call the police," he insisted. Lily looked at him for the first time with something close to pity. "You think this ends with police?" she asked. "These men came here like it was nothing. Someone cleared the path." Evans shook his head. "This is insane." "Yes, and you're finally seeing it." She moved to the therapy table where the injured rival lay. The man was barely breathing, eyes half open. Lily checked his pulse, adjusted his airway, and pressed gauze against a reopening wound. Her hands trembled again, softer now, like a mask being placed back on. The hostages stared in disbelief. She could kill in seconds, then return to healing like nothing happened. Outside the PT wing, footsteps echoed, multiple, fast,
organized. Lily's eyes narrowed. More incoming, and this time they might not hesitate.
A voice boomed from the hallway. "PT Jim, we know you're in there." It wasn't hospital security. The tone was too confident, too armed. The remaining conscious gunman, pinned earlier, began to laugh nervously. "They're here," he whispered. "You're dead." Lily didn't flinch. She moved to the door and listened. Heavy boots, multiple men, tactical formation. Evans crawled closer. "Lily, please, what do we do?" She glanced at him sharply. "Don't call me that." Evans blinked. "What?" Lily's voice hardened. "Lily is the cover, and it needs to survive." She turned to the hostages. "Everyone stay behind the cabinets. Don't move, don't scream." The nurse nodded rapidly, guiding patients into cover. Then Lily looked at Evans again, eyes cutting through him. "You wanted to see stamina. You wanted to see control." She leaned closer. "Now you will." The door handle rattled. A key card beeped. Someone was unlocking it. Lily tightened her grip on the pistol she'd taken. She checked the magazine, half full. Not enough for a firefight. So she didn't prepare for a firefight. She prepared for surgery. Because every attacker was just a body with weak points, and she knew them all. The door swung open. 2 men entered first, rifles raised. They wore black tactical vests, not gang jackets. Their movement was disciplined. They weren't amateurs. Behind them came a 3rd man holding a phone, filming. He smiled like this was entertainment. "Look at this," he said, voice amused. "A little therapist thinks she's a hero." Lily stood still near the center of the gym, hands slightly raised. She looked harmless again, almost fragile. The lead operator stepped closer, rifle aimed at her chest. "Drop the weapon," he ordered. Lily obeyed immediately. She let the pistol slide across the floor away from her. She even let her hands start trembling again. The operator smirked slightly. Good. But Lily's trembling wasn't fear. It was timing. As the man stepped forward to secure the weapon, Lily's eyes flicked to his knee position. His weight shifted to the wrong leg. His rifle strap hung too loose. His chin exposed just enough. Lily moved, not with rage, but with precision. She lunged low, sweeping his ankle while pulling the rifle strap forward. He fell hard, his weapon trapped against his chest. Before he could roll, Lily pressed her heel into his forearm, forcing nerve compression. His fingers released the trigger reflexively. The second operator raised his rifle, but Lily was already inside his space. Too close to shoot, too close to breathe. The second operator tried to step back, creating distance. Lily didn't allow it. She grabbed the front of his vest and pulled him forward instead, smashing his own momentum into her elbow. Her elbow struck his jaw at an upward angle, not enough to kill, enough to disorient. He staggered, vision blurring. Lily's shot up to the side of his neck, pressing sharply into the vagus nerve area. His body betrayed him. Dizziness hit like a wave. His knees bent. The man filming screamed, backing away. "Shoot her!" he yelled. The operator on the ground tried to raise his rifle, but Lily stumped the weapon barrel downward, pinning it. She then shifted her weight onto his shoulder joint, forcing it out of alignment. A painful crack echoed. He screamed, rolling in agony. The man filming turned to run. Lily grabbed a resistance band from the equipment rack and whipped it around his neck like a lasso. She yanked, pulling him backward, slamming him onto the floor. The phone skidded away, recording the ceiling.
Lily leaned over him. "Who sent you?" The man spit. "You're finished, Valkyrie." Lily's face darkened, so the name was spreading again. She glanced toward the hallway. More footsteps, more men, and she realized something terrifying. This wasn't extraction. It was containment. They didn't want her dead. They wanted her captured.
The hostages behind cover were shaking uncontrollably. One patient clutched his chest, struggling to breathe. A nurse tried to calm him, whispering prayers. Evans, still on the floor, watched Lily like he was witnessing a myth. "You're not just a therapist," he murmured. Lily didn't spare him a glance. She was thinking faster than everyone else combined. If these tactical men wanted capture, it meant she had value. But value was dangerous. It meant interrogation. It meant torture. It meant being dragged back into a world she escaped. She moved to the injured rival on the table again, checking his bleeding. The man looked up weakly. "They'll kill me," he whispered. Lily stared at him. Maybe. Then she adjusted his bandage tighter. "But not before I decide." The words shocked even herself, because this wasn't her mission anymore. She wasn't assigned. She wasn't ordered. She was choosing. A new voice echoed outside, calm, controlled. "Lily Carter, we know you're in there." Lily froze, not because of fear, because the voice was American, military, and familiar. Evans whispered, "Who is that?" Lily's eyes narrowed. If that voice belonged to who she thought, then this wasn't just a hostage crisis. It was a retrieval operation, and she was the package. The voice continued through the hallway loudspeaker. "Lily Carter, this is Colonel Hayes. Stand down and step into the corridor." The hostages stared at each other, confused. "Colonel? In a hospital?" Evans whispered, "Colonel Hayes?" Lily's expression hardened. She hadn't heard that name since the last briefing room she ever walked out of. The man had been high-ranking, ruthless, and efficient. He never showed emotion. And now he was here. Another voice joined, female, sharper, more direct. "Valkyrie, enough games, come out." That voice hit Lily like a knife. She recognized it instantly. Captain Monroe, the only officer who had once looked at Lily like she was human. Lily stepped toward the door slowly. Her hands trembled again, but her eyes were steady. Evans called out, "Wait, don't go." Lily turned to him for the first time fully. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "If they came, they're not leaving without me." Then she looked back at the hostages. "You all stay down. If shooting starts, don't move." Evans swallowed hard. "So what are you going to do?" Lily's answer was a whisper. "What I always do." She reached for the door and opened it. The corridor was filled with armed men. Not gangsters, not amateurs. These were trained operators with military-grade gear, helmets, comms, and rifles held with perfect discipline. At the center stood Colonel Hayes, tall, gray-haired, sharp eyes like steel. Next to him was Captain Monroe, her uniform crisp, her stance confident, her gaze locked on Lily like a sniper sight. Hayes studied Lily's trembling hands. "So the tremor story's still working," he said. Lily's voice stayed calm. "Why are you here?"
Monroe stepped forward. Because you were supposed to stay buried. Lily's jaw tightened. I did. Hayes gestured toward the PT gym behind her. And yet you just dismantled a mercenary squad inside a civilian hospital. Lily looked him in the eye. They came in armed. Hayes nodded slightly. You forced our hand. Lily's eyes flicked to the tactical man around them. You're not here to rescue hostages. Monroe's expression softened slightly. No. Lily swallowed once. You're here to retrieve me. Hayes didn't deny it. Instead, he smiled faintly. Welcome back, Valkyrie. And that was the moment Lily realized she never truly escaped. She was just on pause. Inside the gym, hostages listened through the cracked door. Evans crept closer, peering out. The sight of military operators in the hallway made him dizzy with confusion. Lily stepped fully into the corridor, closing the door behind her gently, like she was leaving a quiet therapy session. Monroe spoke first. You're compromised. Lily snapped. I'm alive. Hayes raised one hand. Enough. We've located an extraction route. Helicopter incoming in 12 minutes. Lily's eyes flashed. Extraction? From a hospital? Are you insane? Hayes leaned closer, voice low. There are forces moving on this building right now. Your presence has triggered a response. Lily's body went still. Who? Hayes didn't answer immediately. That silence told her everything. The enemy wasn't just local criminals, it was international. Monroe stepped closer. They want you alive, Lily. They want what you know. Lily whispered, I don't know anything anymore. Hayes shook his head. Your brain does. Your hands do. Your instincts do. Then he added the sentence that made Lily's blood chill. And your tremor trick won't fool them. Lily stared at him. Because, Hayes continued, they already know the truth. Lily's eyes narrowed. What truth? Monroe's voice was quiet now. That your shaking hands aren't weakness. They're a weapon. Hayes signaled his team to secure the corridor. Operators took positions, rifles aimed down hallways, scanning for threats. The hospital staff outside peeked from behind doors, terrified and confused. Lily looked back toward the gym. The hostages were still inside. Patients, nurses, Evans, innocent people who had nothing to do with her life. She turned to Monroe. What about them? Monroe answered quickly. Police are en route. Hospital security has been compromised, but we'll hold the line. Lily didn't trust it. She'd seen too many en routes never arrive. Hayes stepped closer again. We need you focused. Get ready. Lily's hands trembled again, more visible now. Hayes watched them like a scientist watching data. Evans suddenly burst out from the gym, stumbling into the corridor. Hey, he shouted, you can't just take her. She works here. Operators immediately aimed rifles at him. Evans froze, terrified. Lily stepped between Evans and the barrels. Lower them, she snapped. Monroe hesitated, then nodded. The rifles lowered slightly. Evans looked at Lily, anger mixing with fear. What did you do in your past? Who are you? Lily stared at him for a long moment. Then she said softly, I'm the reason you're still breathing. Evans had no answer for that, because it was true. And just then, distant gunfire echoed from the building's entrance. Hayes's head snapped toward the sound. They're here, he said, and Lily knew the next minutes would be war.
The sound of automatic fire rolled through the hospital like thunder. Screams erupted from distant corridors. A nurse ran past, sobbing, shouting that armed men were coming. Hayes's operators immediately moved into formation. "Contact, front," one shouted into comms. Lily's eyes narrowed. She didn't need comms. She could hear the difference between panic fire and trained fire. The enemy wasn't chaotic. They were controlled. Monroe grabbed Lily's arm. "We move now." Lily ripped her arm free. "No." Monroe blinked. "No?" Lily pointed toward the gym. "I'm not leaving them." Hayes's gaze turned icy. "You're not in command anymore." Lily stepped closer, voice deadly calm. "I never stopped being." Hayes seemed ready to argue, but a burst of gunfire struck the wall nearby, showering dust. Everyone ducked. Lily took a breath and made a decision. She sprinted back into the PT gym. Evans stumbled after her. "Lily, wait!" Lily turned sharply. "Stay down," she commanded. Evans froze, finally obeying like everyone else. Inside the gym, patients were crying, huddled behind equipment. Lily grabbed medical tape, metal braces, anything that could be used as an improvised restraint or weapon. She dragged a heavy cabinet toward the door, reinforcing it. Monroe stormed behind her. "What are you doing?" Lily answered without looking up, "Setting a trap." Monroe stared. "For who?" Lily's voice was quiet, almost cold, "For the people who think a hospital is an easy hunting ground." And then the door shook as someone slammed into it from the outside. The enemy was arriving, and Lily was ready.
The reinforced door held for a moment, but only a moment. The impact came again, stronger. Whoever was outside wasn't just pushing, they were breaching. Hayes's voice crackled through Monroe's radio. "We have hostiles approaching Ward 4, multiple units. Move Valkyrie now." Monroe shouted back, "She won't move." Lily ignored them. She crouched beside a therapy table and whispered to an elderly patient, "When I say run, you run to the stairwell and don't look back." The patient nodded, tears in his eyes. Evans crawled closer, whispering, "You're insane. This isn't a battlefield." Lily glanced at him sharply. "It became one the second they walked in with guns." The door finally broke inward. A flashbang rolled across the floor. It spun like a toy, innocent-looking, until it erupted in blinding white light and a deafening boom. Patients screamed. Some covered their ears. Evans cried out in shock. But Lily didn't panic. She'd counted the seconds, predicted the device, turned her head away at the right moment, closed her eyes before detonation. She rose into the smoke like something built for chaos. 3 armed men stormed in, rifles raised, faces hidden behind masks. And Lily's trembling hands vanished again. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because fear had become fuel. She moved forward, not to fight, to neutralize. The first attacker aimed at the group of hostages behind cover. Lily's body reacted before her mind finished thinking. She sprinted, grabbed a therapy belt, and whipped it around his rifle barrel, yanking it downward. The rifle fired into the floor, shattering tiles. Lily slammed her knee into the attacker's thigh, hitting the femoral nerve area. His leg buckled. She drove her elbow into his throat, just enough to cut airflow. He dropped, gagging, unable to breathe properly. The second attacker tried to circle around her, weapon trained on her back. Lily spun, grabbing a metal crutch and swinging it into his wrist. Bones cracked. The rifle fell. Lily kicked it away instantly. The third attacker raised his pistol, switching to close range. He fired. The shot missed by inches because Lily had already moved offline. She rushed him, slammed her palm into his chest, then used 2 fingers to strike beneath his rib cage, targeting the solar plexus. He gasped, collapsing. The speed of it wasn't cinematic, it was clinical. It looked like someone turning off switches inside the human body. Monroe stared from the doorway, stunned. She had trained beside Lily years ago, but even she forgot how terrifying Valkyrie truly was. Evans whispered, shaking, "She's not human." Lily didn't hear him. She was already looking for the next wave, because trained enemies never came alone.
More footsteps thundered toward the gym. Lily knew the rhythm now. Boots, formation, discipline. This was a coordinated assault. Hayes's team fought in the hallway, gunfire echoing like a storm. But the enemy was pushing hard. Lily turned to Monroe. "How many?" Monroe checked her comms. "Too many. They're everywhere." Lily's jaw tightened. "Then we need a corridor break." Monroe frowned. "We can't, not with civilians here." Lily scanned the room. Therapy equipment, metal supports, traction machines, cabinets. She saw something else too. Oxygen tanks stored for emergency patients. A dangerous idea formed. She grabbed Monroe's vest and pulled her close. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "I need you to get them out through the maintenance corridor behind the cabinets." Monroe hesitated. "And you?" Lily's eyes were steady. "I'll draw fire." Monroe shook her head. "No, that's suicide." Lily gave her a faint smile. "It's what I was built for." Evans overheard and shouted, "No, you can't just sacrifice yourself." Lily turned to him, voice sharp as a blade. "Dr. Evans, you spent weeks calling me weak." She stepped closer. "Now you'll learn what strength actually costs." Evans went silent, shame burning on his face. Lily moved toward the center of the gym, where she could be seen. She wanted the attackers' attention. And outside, the enemy commander shouted something in another language, an order to advance. Lily breathed out slowly. The tremor disappeared, and she stepped into violence like it was home.
The next attackers entered with heavier gear, body armor, tactical helmets, weapons with mounted lights. Their flashlights swept the room, landing on Lily like a spotlight. "There!" one shouted. They opened fire. Bullets tore into therapy equipment, shredding padding and metal. Patients screamed. Sparks exploded from struck machinery. Lily moved through it like she'd danced with bullets before. She ducked behind a traction frame, rolled across the floor, and emerged behind a cabinet near the oxygen tanks. Monroe whispered urgently to the hostages, "Move, now." Nurses guided patients toward the maintenance corridor. Evans helped lift an elderly man, trembling but determined. Lily grabbed an oxygen tank, twisted the valve slightly, and let it hiss. The sound drew the attackers closer, like insects to noise. One man approached, rifle raised. Lily threw a reflex hammer at his face, not to hurt, but to blind. He flinched. Then Lily slammed the oxygen tank sideways into his knee. The joint shattered. He screamed, collapsing. Lily didn't finish him. She wasn't killing unless necessary, but she was disabling fast. Another attacker rushed in, swinging his weapon like a club. Lily slid under it, struck his Achilles tendon with the edge of the tank, and forced him down. It wasn't brute strength. It was targeted anatomy. The body as a machine,
weak points as buttons. The attackers panicked. They expected fear. They found a predator in scrubs. Outside the gym, Hayes shouted into comms, "We're losing ground!" Monroe's voice snapped back, "Civilians are moving." Lily listened, calculating time. Extraction was coming, but she needed one thing first, a clean corridor for evacuation. And to get it, she had to break the enemy's momentum. She stepped out into open view and shouted, "Come take me." The hallway went quiet for one terrifying second. Then, the enemy surged in like a wave. The enemy commander entered last. He was taller than the others, wearing a vest heavier with plates, his weapon held with the calm confidence of experience. His mask was removed, revealing sharp cheekbones and cold, calculating eyes. He studied Lily like she was an artifact. "So, the Valkyrie is real," he said in accented English. Lily didn't respond. She kept her breathing slow. The commander smiled slightly. "Your hands, they don't shake when it matters." Lily answered quietly, "Neither do yours." He chuckled. "Good. That means you understand this is not personal." Lily's voice sharpened. "Then why bring guns into a hospital?" The commander lifted his weapon slightly. "Because you're worth it." Lily's eyes flicked to his stance. Balanced, stable, dangerous. This man wasn't like the others. He wouldn't panic. He advanced slowly. The other attackers formed a semicircle around Lily, trying to trap her. But Lily didn't fight like a civilian. She didn't fight like a brawler. She fought like a surgeon. She threw a resistance band at one man's face, and as he flinched, she broke his wrist with a precise stump. Another attacker lunged. Lily struck his throat, and then his knee in one motion, dropping him. The commander watched calmly, impressed. "She is beautiful," he whispered, almost admiring. Lily ignored the insult disguised as praise. Her eyes locked on his weapon. She needed it. She stepped forward, hands trembling again, pretending weakness. The commander raised his rifle. "Stop," he warned. Lily smiled faintly. Then she moved in the smallest way, barely visible, like a twitch, a fake tremor. And that twitch was the trigger, because she used it to bait his reaction. The commander fired exactly where her head used to be, but Lily had already shifted left. The shot missed, and Lily was now inside his reach, close enough to touch him, close enough to break him. The commander's eyes widened for the first time, because he realized the truth. The tremor was never weakness. It was camouflage.
Lily grabbed the rifle barrel and twisted it hard, forcing it to point away from the hostages. The commander resisted, stronger than anyone before. His training showed. He tried to knee her ribs, but Lily rotated her hip, absorbing the strike and redirecting his force. She slammed her elbow into his wrist joint. His grip loosened slightly. Not enough. The commander attempted a headbutt. Lily leaned back just enough to avoid full impact, then drove 2 fingers into the hollow behind his collarbone, targeting the brachioplexus. Pain flashed across his face. His left arm went numb instantly. He staggered. Lily used the opening to hook his leg and sweep him down. The commander crashed onto his back. But unlike the amateurs, he didn't stay down. He rolled, reaching for a sidearm. Lily was faster. She stomped his hand mid-reach, crushing fingers against the floor. His pistol slid away. The commander groaned, breath shaking. Lily leaned over him, eyes cold. "Tell your people, this is a hospital." The commander laughed through pain. "And you're a weapon." Lily's jaw tightened. She didn't deny it.
Then she heard Monroe shout from behind, "We're clear! Civilians are moving out!" Lily glanced back. The hostages were disappearing into the maintenance corridor, guided by nurses and Monroe. Even Evans was helping, his arrogance burned away by terror and awe. Good. They were safe. Now Lily had one job left: buy time for Hayes's extraction. She stood up slowly, facing the remaining attackers. Her hands trembled again, but now it wasn't fake. It was adrenaline, real, wild. She whispered under her breath, "All right," and she stepped forward one more time, because the field had returned and the Valkyrie was awake.
The attackers hesitated now. They had seen their commander fall. They had seen men drop in seconds, disabled by strikes that looked almost gentle. Fear spread through them like poison. One attacker raised his rifle but didn't fire. His hands shook. Lily noticed immediately. "You're not trained for this," she said softly. The attacker shouted, "Shut up!" and fired. The bullet struck a cabinet behind Lily as she rolled away. Hayes's voice echoed from the corridor, shouting orders to his team. The firefight outside intensified. Hospital alarms blared now. Red lights flashed across the walls like emergency sirens in a war zone. Lily moved behind cover and exhaled. She needed to end this fast. She grabbed a heavy metal brace from the therapy rack and held it like a baton. Her hands shook violently now. She let them. She wanted them to see the shaking. She wanted them to think it meant panic. Then she sprinted forward suddenly, bursting from cover. The first attacker tried to track her with his rifle, too slow. Lily slammed the brace into her forearm, snapping it. He screamed, dropping the weapon. She spun, striking the second attacker's knee sideways. The joint collapsed. Third attacker lunged with a knife. Lily caught his wrist, twisted hard, and pressed the blade into his own thigh. Not deep, enough to make him collapse, shocked by his own pain. She stepped back, breathing hard. The room fell silent, except for groans and distant gunfire. Lily looked toward the corridor. Monroe was gone with civilians. Good. Now Hayes needed to reach her. But Hayes had another plan. A loudspeaker crackled again. "Valkyrie," Hayes called. "Chopper is down. We need alternate extraction." Lily froze, because now the mission wasn't about surviving. It was about escaping. And escape was always the hardest part.
Hayes's message hit Lily like a punch. Chopper is down. That meant the sky was compromised. Someone had anticipated extraction and blocked it. The enemy wanted her alive, and now they had trapped her. Lily stepped into the hallway carefully. Smoke and dust filled the air. Bullet holes scarred the walls. A body lay near a nurse station, one of Hayes's operators, wounded but alive, clutching his side. Hayes stood further down the corridor, firing controlled bursts toward incoming hostiles. He saw Lily and shouted, "Move, now!" Lily sprinted to him, ducking behind cover. "What happened?" demanded Lily. Hayes didn't look at her. "Hostiles hit the roof access. They took out our bird." Lily clenched her jaw. "Then we go ground." Monroe's voice came through comms, strained. "Civilians are in stairwell, but the lower floors are blocked." Lily's mind raced. Stairwell blocked means containment. They were corralling everyone, forcing pressure upward. Hayes glanced at Lily. "I can't lose you." Lily's eyes flashed. "You don't own me." Hayes leaned close, voice harsh. "You're a national asset." Lily stared back, cold. "I'm a human being." A grenade detonated down the hall, shaking the building. Hayes's team retreated. Lily grabbed a map from the wall, hospital evacuation routes. Her hands shook as she traced a finger.
There, underground access, maintenance tunnel leading to the parking structure. She looked at Hayes. We go through the basement. Hayes hesitated. That's a kill box. Lily's voice was calm. Then we make it ours. And for the first time, Hayes didn't argue, because he could see something in Lily's eyes. Not fear, not panic, a quiet acceptance. She'd done this before, and she would do it again. They moved as one unit, heading toward the stairwell. Behind them, the enemy advanced, and the hospital trembled like a living thing, just like Lily's hands.
The stairwell smelled like sweat and panic. Civilians huddled on the steps, patients in wheelchairs, nurses clutching IV bags, Evans holding an elderly man's arm tightly. Monroe stood near the top, weapon raised, guarding the group. She saw Lily and exhaled with relief. "You made it," she said. Lily nodded once. "We're going basement." Evans overheard and shook his head. "Basement? That's madness." Lily looked at him sharply. "Do you want to live?" Evans swallowed. "Yes." "Then follow orders," Lily said. Hayes barked commands, directing his team to form a protective wedge around the civilians. As they moved downward, the sound of gunfire grew louder. The lower levels were active combat zones. Halfway down, Lily stopped. She placed her hand on the railing. It trembled hard. Evans noticed and whispered, "You're shaking again." Lily didn't deny it. "Yes," she said. Evans frowned. "So you are afraid?" Lily turned to him slowly. Her eyes weren't angry. They were brutally honest. "I'm not afraid. I'm alive." Then she leaned closer, voice low. "My hands shake because my nervous system is running at maximum speed. Every cell is ready to react." Evans stared like his worldview just shattered. Lily continued, "In the field, the operators who survived weren't calm. They were controlled chaos." Monroe interrupted. "Movement!" Footsteps echoed from below, enemy units entering the stairwell. Hayes signaled silently. His team raised rifles. Civilians crouched, covering heads. Lily stepped forward, not behind the soldiers, in front. Evans whispered, "Why are you going first?" Lily's answer was simple, "Because I know where to hit them." And as the enemy appeared at the bottom landing, Lily's hand stopped trembling again, perfectly still, because now it was time to cut. The enemy entered the stairwell in tight formation. 3 men, rifles raised, moving fast. They expected civilians. They didn't expect Lily. Lily threw a metal brace down the steps. It clanged loudly, forcing the enemy to look downward. That moment of distraction was all she needed. She sprinted, leaping over 2 steps at a time. The first enemy tried to aim, but Lily grabbed his rifle barrel and yanked it sideways, slamming it into the stairwell wall. She struck his wrist with her elbow, breaking his grip. He screamed. The second enemy attempted to fire past her, aiming at Hayes's team. Lily slammed her palm into his throat, stopping his breath. Then she drove her knee into his hip socket, dislocating it with a horrifying pop. He collapsed instantly. The third enemy reached for a knife. Lily caught his hand mid-motion, twisted sharply, and pressed 2 fingers into the nerve point beneath his thumb. His fingers opened. The knife dropped. Hayes's operators surged forward, restraining the attackers with zip ties. It was fast, coordinated. Evans watched from the steps, mouth open. "You're using medical techniques," he whispered. Lily glanced back. Anatomy is truth. Then she looked downward again. More footsteps were coming. Monroe shouted, "We can't hold the stairwell forever." Lily nodded. "We won't." She pointed to a maintenance door on the lower landing. "That tunnel leads to the parking structure. Once we reach it, split the group." Hayes frowned. "Split?" Lily's voice was cold.
Civilians go first. We cover." Evans suddenly stepped forward. "No, I'll cover too." Everyone stared at him. Lily raised her eyebrow. "You?" Evans swallowed hard. I'm done being useless." Lily studied him for a second, then nodded once. "Then don't get in the way." Evans nodded rapidly, terrified but determined. The maintenance door opened. Cold air rushed out. Darkness waited beyond, and Lily led them into it, like a ghost guiding the living away from death. Behind them, enemy boots thundered in the stairwell again, and Lily smiled faintly, because the tunnel was narrow, and narrow spaces were where she thrived.
The maintenance tunnel was dimly lit, pipes lining the ceiling like veins. Water dripped from somewhere unseen. The air smelled of rust and concrete. Civilians shuffled forward in a tight line, wheelchairs pushed carefully, nurses whispering encouragement. Monroe led the front, Hayes's team guarding the rear. Lily moved in the middle, scanning every shadow. Evans stayed close to Lily, breathing hard. "How do you stay so calm?" he whispered. Lily didn't look at him. "I'm not calm." Evans blinked. "But you look—" "I look controlled. There's a difference." A sudden clang echoed behind them. Enemy units entered the tunnel, their flashlight beams sliced through darkness. "Move!" Hayes shouted. The civilians accelerated, panic rising again. Lily pulled Evans toward a side alcove filled with stored equipment. She grabbed a metal hook tool and handed it to Evans. "Hold this," she said. Evans stared. "What do I do with it?" Lily leaned close. "If someone grabs you, shove it into their inner thigh, hard. That's the femoral nerve zone." Evans swallowed, hands shaking. "You want me to stab someone?" Lily's eyes were ice. "You want to live?" Evans nodded. Lily moved back toward the rear with Hayes's operators. Enemy gunfire cracked through the tunnel, bullets striking pipes with loud metallic screams. Hayes shouted, "We can't return fire with civilians in line." Lily nodded. "Then I'll end it without bullets." She stepped into the tunnel's center path, raising her hands as if surrendering. Her hands trembled again, big, visible. Enemy soldiers shouted, "Stop! Hands up!" Lily obeyed. She looked helpless. Then she lunged forward suddenly, closing the distance before they could react. She struck the first soldier's neck with precision, disabling him. She spun, broke another man's wrist, stole his flashlight, and slammed it into his face. The tunnel became chaos, but Lily's movements remained surgical, efficient, silent. Evans watched horrified, because he realized the truth. This wasn't a therapist pretending to be dangerous. This was a killer pretending to be weak. The enemy commander from earlier appeared at the tunnel entrance, limping but alive, his hand wrapped, his eyes burning with fury. "You can't run forever," he shouted. "We will take you." Lily turned slowly, flashlight beam cutting across her face. Her hands were steady now. "I'm not running. I'm evacuating civilians." The commander laughed bitterly. "Still pretending to be noble?" Lily's voice hardened. "Still pretending you're in control?" He raised his weapon. "Enough. Drop to your knees." Lily didn't. She stepped forward instead, fearless. The commander fired. The shot whizzed past her shoulder, hitting the wall. He fired again. Lily moved, the tremor-like micro-shifts saving her by inches. Evans, watching from behind, gasped. She's using shaking to dodge," he whispered. Lily rushed the commander. He tried to strike her with the rifle butt. Lily caught the motion, rotated her body, and drove her elbow into his rib cage, cracking bone. He grunted, but stayed standing, strong, determined.
Lily stepped closer and pressed her thumb into a point just below his jaw. Pain exploded in his face. His grip weakened. She took his rifle and threw it down the tunnel. Then she slammed her knee into his stomach, driving air out of him. He fell to one knee. Lily grabbed his collar and whispered, "You chose the wrong target." The commander looked up, hatred and awe mixing. "You're shaking again," he spat. Lily smiled faintly. "Yes," she said, "because I'm holding back." Then she struck him once more, 2 fingers into his neck cluster. His eyes widened, his body locked, and he collapsed unconscious onto the tunnel floor. Hayes stared at Lily, shocked. Even he had forgotten her efficiency. Monroe called from the front, "Exit ahead." Lily sprinted toward the parking structure, guiding the last civilians out. The moment they emerged into open air, sirens wailed in the distance. Police finally arrived. But Lily didn't relax, because she knew the real danger wasn't police. It was what came after, the cleanup, the silencing, and she was about to disappear again.
The parking structure was damp and echoing, lit by flickering lights. Police sirens grew louder outside, but Lily didn't feel relief. She felt the clock ticking. Hayes grabbed her arm. "We have a vehicle waiting, now." Lily looked toward the civilians being rushed toward safety. Nurses crying, hugging patients. Evans stood there, shaking uncontrollably, staring at Lily like a nightmare and a miracle combined. Monroe approached Lily slowly, her voice softer now. "You saved them," Monroe said. Lily's eyes flicked to the exit. "I did what was necessary." Monroe swallowed. "You didn't have to come back into that gym. You could have left." Lily finally looked at her fully. "I know," she said. That single sentence carried years of guilt, years of ghosts. Hayes stepped closer. "We can debrief later. Move." Lily stepped back from his grip. "No." Hayes blinked. "No?" Lily's voice turned cold again. "You came here because you wanted to own me again." Hayes's face hardened. "You're a strategic asset." Lily shook her head. "I'm not your tool." Monroe tried to intervene. "Lily, please, if you stay, they'll come again." Lily smiled faintly. "Then let them." Monroe stared. "You're going to disappear?" Lily nodded once. "I was invisible for years. I can be invisible again." Hayes reached for her arm again, but Lily stepped away faster than Hayes expected. Evans suddenly walked forward, voice trembling. "Lily, don't go." She looked at him. Evans swallowed hard. "I treated you like trash." Lily didn't deny it. Evans continued, eyes wet. "But you saved me. You saved all of us." Lily held his gaze for a long moment. Then she spoke quietly. "Let that be your lesson." And she turned away from them all, walking into the darkness of the parking structure like she belonged there. Because she did. Evans watched as she disappeared into the shadows and felt something unfamiliar. Shame. Real shame. Not embarrassment, not pride injury. Shame that cut deep. He shouted after her, "Your hands. Were you really faking it all this time?" Lily stopped, not turning around yet. She answered softly, "Sometimes." Evans frowned. "Sometimes?" Lily turned her head slightly, her profile visible under the flickering lights. She said, "Sometimes my hands shook because I was hiding, and sometimes they shook because I was remembering." Evan's throat tightened. Remembering what? Lily finally looked back fully. Her eyes were tired now, older than her face.
People I couldn't save, she said. Evans had no words. Monroe stepped forward gently. Lily, please, come with us. You don't have to do this alone. Lily's expression softened slightly, like a crack in armor. You're kind to offer, she said, but kindness doesn't protect you from the world I lived in. Hayes snarled, This is not optional. Lily's eyes snapped to him, sharp again. You're right, it's not optional. Then she added, For you. Hayes froze, confused. Lily reached into her pocket and tossed something to Monroe, a small drive. Monroe caught it, shocked. What is this? Lily answered quietly. Insurance. Names. Contacts. Routes. Hayes's eyes widened. You kept that? Lily smiled faintly. I kept everything. Monroe stared, speechless. Lily stepped backward into the shadows. Tell them the Valkyrie is dead, and tell the next resident who mocks a trembling hand. She paused, letting the words land like a blade. That shaking doesn't mean weakness. Then she vanished completely, swallowed by darkness. Evans stood frozen, his entire identity dismantled like the mercenaries in the gym. Because he realized the truth. The most dangerous people in the world don't look dangerous. They look broken. Until the moment they choose not to be.
Days later, the hospital tried to return to normal. Walls were patched, equipment replaced, security increased. Staff were told to sign documents promising silence. Evans walked through the PT wing like a different man. He no longer smiled at attention. He no longer made jokes. Every time he heard a monitor beep, his stomach tightened. Patients talked about the incident in whispers. A ghost woman who fought like a soldier. A therapist who stopped bullets with her bare hands. Stories grew louder each time they were repeated. But the official report was clean. Unidentified attackers subdued by security forces. No mention of Lily. No mention of Valkyrie. No mention of nerve strikes and surgical takedowns. Monroe visited once, standing in the hallway where the gym doors had been repaired. Evans approached her quietly. Where is she? He asked. Monroe stared forward, eyes distant. Gone. Evans swallowed. Will she come back? Monroe shook her head. She doesn't come back. She survives. Evans hesitated, then asked something that had haunted him since that day. Why was she shaking? Monroe looked at him slowly. Because she was holding a storm inside her body, and because she didn't want anyone to see how fast she could move. Evans nodded slowly, understanding at last. From that day on, he treated every therapist, nurse, and patient differently. He stopped mocking weakness. He stopped assuming shaking meant failure, because he had seen the truth with his own eyes. A tremor can be trauma. A tremor can be control. A tremor can be a warning. And in Lily's case, a tremor was a blade hidden in plain sight. Monroe returned to her unit with the drive Lily had given her. Hayes demanded it immediately, furious that Lily escaped. But Monroe didn't hand it over right away. She sat alone in a secure room, staring at the small device like it was alive. She knew Lily had planned everything, even the escape, even the betrayal. When Monroe finally opened the files, her hands went cold. Names of corrupt officials, black operations, secret routes, everything Lily carried in silence for years.
Monroe realized Lily hadn't been running from enemies only. She'd been running from her own side, too. Hayes entered, face sharp with anger. "You had no right to withhold that," he snapped. Monroe looked up calmly. "She didn't trust you." Hayes slammed his fist on the table. "She's a weapon that belongs to the state." Monroe's eyes narrowed. "No, she's a human being you used until she broke." Hayes glared. "She's compromised. She's loose." Monroe leaned forward, voice low. "Then you should have treated her like a person, not a tool." Hayes said nothing. Outside, a new report arrived. Satellite data, signal intercepts, enemy factions moving, searching, tracking, a ghost. Hayes looked at the screen and whispered, "They'll hunt her until she dies." Monroe stared at the data, then answered quietly, "Then they don't know her." Because Monroe had seen Lily fight in that hospital. She had seen the Valkyrie awaken, and she knew one terrifying truth. When Lily Carter chose to survive, the world around her didn't stand a chance. And somewhere in the night, Lily moved unseen, through alleyways, rooftops, shadows, her hands trembling softly as she disappeared into a new life. Not weak, not broken, just free. Evans stood in the PT gym one evening after hours, staring at the therapy table where the hostage victim had nearly died. The room was quiet now, but the memory wasn't. He could still hear gunshots in his mind, still see Lily's hands becoming perfectly still. He remembered every cruel joke, every time he forced her to hold equipment just to laugh when her fingers trembled. Now, whenever he held a medical tool, he noticed how fragile control really was, how quickly chaos could enter a peaceful place. He whispered to the empty room, "I'm sorry." No one answered, but in a strange way, Evans felt like Lily had left him with something. Not forgiveness, not comfort, a lesson. He began teaching new residents differently. He told them, "Never mock a trembling hand. You don't know what battle they just came from." Some residents laughed, some rolled their eyes. Evans didn't care. He had seen a predator in human skin, a ghost disguised as a healer, a woman who could end violence in seconds using nothing but knowledge of the body. He understood now that physical strength wasn't what made someone dangerous. It was control. It was awareness. It was the ability to switch from calm to lethal without hesitation. And Lily Carter had done that flawlessly. The hospital would forget her name. The reports would erase her existence. The world would bury her story. But Evans never forgot. Because when he closed his eyes at night, he still saw her hands, shaking until they weren't. And he realized the most terrifying thing wasn't the tremor. It was the silence right before it stopped. So remember this. Not every trembling hand is weakness. Some tremors come from trauma, some from control, some from a nervous system tuned to react faster than normal people ever could. Lily let them laugh. She let them call her the ghost. She let them believe she was broken, because broken people don't get hunted. Broken people don't get questioned. Broken people get ignored. But when danger walked into Ward 4 with a gun and a smile, Lily's hands didn't shake anymore. They became still, precise, surgical, like a switch flipped inside her soul. And in 4 seconds, she proved a terrifying truth. Medical knowledge can become ultimate self-defense. Anatomy can become a weapon. A healer can become a predator.
The resident who mocked her learned the hard way. The mercenaries who hunted her learned even harder, because Lily Carter was never the wrong target. She was the last lesson and the final warning.